Howdy. Jared Feinberg, Devin Jackson, Blue Chip Scouting, and the Draft Up Podcast. We are here to talk about some draft prospects and football and anything else y'all want to talk about. Devin, how's it going, bro?
Pretty good, man. It's been a pretty good day. Definitely been a good day for college athletes as they can officially, under the new NIL agreement, sign endorsements and get sponsorships and pretty much do whatever they can to earn money. So it's been an exciting day following all of that. You can follow that list we've been accumulating since midnight last night on bluechipscouting.com. You can go to Blue Chip Scout on Twitter, and it's the pinned tweet for now. But yeah, I gotta give a shout out to Ben, Russell, of course, Harbs as well for keeping track of that, and everyone else on the Blue Chip team being able to send over whenever they see something. So that's been a pretty good day, man.
I want to give a shout out as well to all of the college athletes out there. Congratulations on getting your money already. There are plenty of college athletes, especially big names like Spencer Rattler, quarterback out of Oklahoma, gymnast Olivia Dunn, already getting her stuff on, going on in Times Square. Some big name people in college athletics getting their money already on the first day that the interim name, image, likeness policy has come into effect for the NCAA. Now, there are plenty of states out there around the country that have still yet to approve or even motion through the possibility of having an NIL policy for their respective state. I know North Carolina has a bill ready to go, but it hasn't gone through the state Senate or the state House. So that's something I'll have to monitor here as a North Carolinian. So, finally seeing college athletes getting paid, and we're also a big step closer to having NCAA football again, bro.
It's been forever, man.
I remember when it came out, and I'm like, it's been popular for all these years, even since they haven't released it since 2013. And now, it's possibly coming out as soon as next year. They're able to, if EA Sports is able to. And it would not surprise me if it's the highest selling video game ever, just because of how popular it's been around the sports media, at least.
Yeah, definitely so. It's a game that I've still played all these years later. A lot of people on Twitter do. I know Thor Nystrom. He always does dynasties and all types of things. So it's one of those games that you really never get tired of playing. I think it was like I guess you could say cutting edge at the time, because the ability to, obviously do a road to glory and take your own player to the NFL. Then you could, do where you basically take over a college team, take them from the bottom to the top. You could do a whole bunch of different things with it. Play online, of course. So, I'm interested to see how they would kind of change the gameplay, if they would change it at all. I thought it was pretty fun the way it was, but I know that they're probably going to make upgrades. But it'll be also interesting to see if players will actually have their names within the game as well, or if they're still going to do that same formula where they make it very similar, but obviously don't give names and stuff. So that's still obviously things still to be worked on and kind of in the works as EA Sports is potentially working on, but we'll see what happens with it.
Mm-hmm. Did you see the home field advantage stuff for Madden 22? Like, what the hell is that? Like, what are we doing? They make all these improvements for franchise mode, and then they come out with this home field advantage crap. Like, there better be a setting when you start franchise mode where not to have that home field advantage setting because those factors, those like X factor home field advantage stuff, just looks ridiculous. Like
Yeah, I can see why they're trying to add like these extra things. Because
yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, some some stadiums really do have that home field advantage. So I guess they're trying to give it a feel of it being an actual, like you're actually at the game and
Mm-hmm.
you can't hear anything. But some of the features like you lose footing in certain stadiums. You there was all types of things. It was strange for sure. I mean, I don't know if I dislike it or not. I mean, the ideas, I like I said, I understand the idea and where they're trying to come from with that, but
Mm-hmm.
I think having actually seeing it probably will be a better kind of visual to understand what exactly they were trying to go after with this particular features. But we'll see what happens with it. But I know that was something that was talked about quite a bit on Twitter earlier today.
I think Madden is there. You can tell they're trying really, really hard to bring a lot of fans back who have essentially boycotted the game. They want to, like, they're going to continue to make improvements to the most popular version of the game, the franchise mode, connected franchise mode. So they're trying, and I respect that. Maybe this home field advantage, X Factor stuff, whatever it's called, that it could be them trying a little too hard in a sense. But I get where they're trying to come from, trying to make it more of a game day experience when you're playing games or playing 2v2 or 1v1 multiplayer against other opponents and whatnot. So that's something we're going to have to check out ourselves once Madden 22 comes out. I am definitely buying the game. I have always bought every Madden game since I really started playing Madden games maybe 7 or 8 years ago. So I have a big stack of games of from the Madden franchise, and I will continue to buy games of the Madden franchise as long as they exist. So we got some draft prospects to get into, Devin. I mentioned the other day on the podcast. I mentioned yesterday on the podcast that I had watched Matt Corral.
Yeah.
And also I've watched a couple other prospects I end up mentioning to you off the record. Some prospects I was going to try to finished up watching Sam Howell and Breece Hall. And I want to start with Sam Howell because he, in a way, has become a very intriguing prospect in the draft Twitter world, where there's a bunch of varying opinions on Howell as a prospect. There's some people that have him QB1, some don't even have him close to, don't even have him QB1. They have him QB5 or QB6. So there's a lot of varying opinions on him, especially on my end. So I have generally been a big fan of Sam Howell. He a very talented freshman coming out. He is a North Carolina was a former high school football player from North Carolina. Ended up signing with the Tar Heels. I think he was first committed to FSU and then switched to UNC at the last minute when Mac Brown was able to convince him to come to North Carolina. And that turned out to be good for Sam Howell and Mac Brown because Sam Howell has become one of the best quarterbacks in college football. And North Carolina is now considered I wouldn't say a powerhouse, but a very good school and a very good school that has been recruiting well because of Mac Brown. They have a bunch of five-star players on the roster, 4-star, 3-star, you name it. Sam Howell, his freshman year, one of the first games I watched of Sam Howell was freshman year against Clemson. He looked really, really good in that game. Um, he very smart with the ball. Made some beautiful passes, including a pass to Dimey Brown, first quarter of the game to take the lead over Clemson, an early lead against Clemson. And like his arm talent, it pops off on tape. Have some notes here from when I finished this evaluation today. His arm strength is definitely a plus in his game. He has the ability to throw to all three levels of the field. He displays the ability to drive balls very well, especially from the far hash. He has made plenty of far hash throws. One of the concerns I noted down firsthand was the offense. And that was like the first thing I wrote down when, even before I started watching his film, was Phil Longo's offense. And look, it's a good college offensive scheme. They run a lot of run pass option and object reads. And I didn't know really what object reads were until I read a little bit of Jordan Reed of the Draft Network, who's been on Draft Nut podcast with us for an interview as a guest. He talked about what an object read was, and he said in his article about Sam Howell, it's nearly identical to the run pass option. Object reads are passing concepts that place a sole emphasis on a single defender. Depending on which area he aligns or moves in, Howell has options on where to attack on the field, and that was very present on film throughout the time I watched Sam Howell's tape. He's accurate. The accuracy is quite evident. Even though decision making does get in the way sometimes, it's definitely hit and miss in that area. He's going to need time to really work in that area. Needs to learn to take what's in front of him, and I think that's a struggle with a lot of quarterbacks coming into their junior year that we've seen in the past, like Tua, Trevor Lawrence. They have had struggles of not taking what's in front of them and being too aggressive downfield. That's kind of the same concern I have with Sam Howell here, is he doesn't take what's in front of him, and that gets him into trouble sometimes. He is thrown into double, triple coverages sometimes, struggles with looking off the safety, single high or split safety, and that was very evident against Syracuse. He had a couple picks. One of them was against Andre Cisco, 2021 draft prospect, very talented safety in terms of ball skills and whatnot. He struggled trying to look him off, and it cost him. So Sam Howell, he has a lot of similarities to Baker Mayfield in terms of arm talent, accuracy, demeanor, toughness, ability out of structure. I liked him a lot out of structure, which I know our ACC scout for our scouting department at Blue Chip Scouting, Russell Janikowski, right?
Yeah.
Did I say my name right? Janikowski. Apologies, Russell. If you're watching this, my bad. Sometimes I struggle with last names. So Russell mentioned in his report on Howell that he wasn't really a big fan of his out of structure play, but when I was watching Howell, he made some pretty good plays out of structure. It's not something you would see. I wasn't expecting anything like what Patrick Mahomes would do or Spencer Rattler would do out of the pocket or out of structure. Howell did a good job maneuvering out of the pocket and able to reset his base and feet, or reset his stance and base, and able to make accurate throws standing tall outside of the pocket. He's quite nimble and quite tough as a runner, and he's a very average athlete, but yeah, he was able to get some very tough yards on the ground, especially in short yardage situations if they were in a passing situation on 3rd and short, they decided to do that. So that was quite evident on tape. His poise and pocket awareness was really, really good, in my opinion. There were some instances where he did allow pressure to really get to him, and he threw some bad balls. But I think I'm expecting some progress from Sam Howell, but not much, because when it comes to Phil Longo's offensive coordinator for North Carolina, Phil Longo doesn't really incorporate a lot of full read concepts. And when he does, it definitely looked like Howell struggled with those full read concepts. Now, he has flashed the ability of going through full reads or full progressions, but he wasn't doing it at a consistent level, and he wasn't doing it well at a consistent level. So I think if that's one thing he will probably struggle with next season, he may have to sit out a season wherever he's drafted. We have no idea where he's going to get drafted. We can only do mock drafts and say right now, based on Super Bowl odds or Vegas odds, where Howell could go, depending on what teams have needs at quarterback. So those are my thoughts on Howell. He had a 2nd round summer grade for me. I really liked this tape, and if he can improve in a couple areas, decision making is definitely one of them. Easily one of his worst traits. I think if he improves in that area, we're going to see a very, very good Sam Howell next year that could make a big leap into being QB1 for the 2022 NFL Draft.
Yeah, he's and we talked about him a little bit last week too, and what he can bring to the table. I think decision making, and then also pocket presence. I think that's something that he could improve as well, because there are times where he gets outside the pocket or he bails the pocket when he has plenty of time to still deliver passes, and would like to see him just stand in more and be able to operate inside the pocket a little bit better. But like you said, he's extremely talented and, going to continue to be hotly debated, going into next year's draft. While you did your evaluation, I finally got to sit down and finish my evaluation on Kendrick Duncan, the Georgia Southern transfer to Louisville. I gave him a 3rd round grade, which I pretty much expected throughout the process, even though it was close. He ended up with a 79 out of 100. In terms of grading. I did dock him for tackling because there are times where he, comes down with authority. He runs the alley really well. I said that in my scouting report as well. That's available at bluechipscouting.com. And talked about his ability to run the alley. But there are times where he tries to go for the big hit, or he's, going for ankles and he misses tackles. So I think he could improve a little bit better. But generally speaking, he's, like I said in the scouting report and what I've talked about over the last couple of weeks, I'm very impressed with his ability to cover, kind of sideline to sideline. He has excellent range, the ability to get from one hash to the other in no time. His instincts allow him to, make plays on the ball when they seem like they're open. There's a couple plays that kind of stand out in terms of his instincts. There was a fake bubble screen and then throw down the seam that he was able to read easily and nearly picked it off. There was another play, I want to say it was against Troy University, where he started off in the box, guarding. I think he was had assignment on the running back, but he sunk underneath a post 20 yards downfield and was able to deflect it away, which just shows his range. He can make plays from starting inside the box all the way down the seam out to the numbers. Pretty much everything you look for in kind of a modern day safety. While I think he's probably more of a free safety at the NFL level or at the next level, I do think there are times you can put him in the box, put him in the slot, and allow him to go man-to-man defense. I think his zone coverage could be a little bit better. He does really well in the deep zones, even the short zones. But I think sometimes he will get sucked up on play action and get out of position, and that can leave some seams down the middle of the field and into the boundary. But generally speaking, I think he's a really good talent. I think Louisville is getting a really good player, and he showed that in the spring already. He was named the newcomer of the spring for Louisville after they finished up spring practices. So he's very, very versatile. He can do a little bit of everything, and he's someone that's already one of my favorite safeties in this class. I know there's obviously Brandon Joseph and Kyle Hamilton been being docked as two of the top safeties in this class, but I think Duncan has a spot at least in the top 10 for me at this moment, and can very well continue to rise up and be one of those late risers that maybe he goes top of the second round by the time the spring rolls around. So excited to see how he fares going from Georgia Southern to Louisville, but I think he'll still be a very good player for the Cardinals.
Something I've always thought about when it comes to defensive backs that really struggle against the run. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that there are defensive backs coming into the NFL, whether it's cornerback, nickel, safety, box safeties, free safety? Why do you think there are defensive backs that tend to struggle against the run? Is it because they rather play in coverage, rather play against receivers and tight ends one-on-one or free range in the back end and want to make plays on the ball? Is that a good, valid reason why why there are plenty of defensive backs that struggle against the run coming out of college, and even still today in the NFL do still struggle against the run?
I think that's part of the reason. I also think the other part of the reason is, there's dynamic athletes all over the field.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult to tackle some of these guys. I mean, you're especially like for secondary or safeties, you're coming from depth to make a tackle. The first and second level defenders don't necessarily get to him. So, those guys are usually obviously better suited to tackle them in short areas. But then when you get into the open field, it's so difficult to kind of balance trying to go for a big hit, trying to cut down a running back, or a slot receiver or whoever has the ball, and taking the correct angle. I think it comes down to really being able to attack angles. And I think sometimes players underestimate the speed of whoever's coming at them, because you're coming from a different part of the field. You're trying to come down and make a tackle. And I think it has a lot to do with, I don't think it's necessarily they don't want to or be a part of tackling. I think it's, either their form isn't as clean, they're trying to go for the big hit, or they're just not taking the right angle. So I think those kind of three things, in addition to what you said before, kind of explain the reason why they may struggle tackling. And I think it's more about, also giving credit to some of the offensive guys, because, trying to tackle Derrick Henry in the open field is not exactly easy task for anybody. I mean, it don't matter if you're, Aaron Donald or whoever, it's hard to tackle that man. So I think you got to take it with a grain of salt a little bit. And most of the guys, they're not going to be outstanding tacklers. And I think by the time you get to the NFL, you just need to be able to get someone on the ground or hold them up at least, and let everyone else come and make the play, and I think, tackling, I think it kind of goes both ways for tackling. I mean, you got guys that can do it. I think it's just more about consistency and being able to take the right angles and have that right form when they do come down and do it.
It has felt rare to see consistently good tackling defensive backs. Like, I feel like over the last couple years, over the last couple drafts, there have been more and more defensive backs that have tended to struggle against the run, especially when it comes to tackling, because, sometimes they do display good tackling technique, coming to balance, shooting their arms up and coming and tackling with the opposite shoulder, and driving the defender or the opposing players down. Now, when it comes to now, there are some defensive backs that consistently tackle very, very well. But I feel like, just to me, that it hasn't been as consistent throughout the last few draft processes. 2020, 2021. Even here in 2022, you're still going to have cornerbacks and safeties that will struggle against the run. So I think that's something that um, that we're probably going to have to get used to, cornerbacks that will struggle tackling wise, because of the dynamic athletes they face on a weekly basis. So it's getting a lot harder nowadays because of the athleticism that's coming onto the field in today's football. That is making it harder and harder to really come to balance and make good tackles, have good tackle technique. And I love cornerbacks that can really make plays against the run. I love safeties that can come downhill, make big hits, but also tackle with good consistency, always making good tackles, good technical tackles, if you know what I mean. So it's something that I think Kendrick Duncan will have to work on this season. Um, now that he's at a new school with Louisville, um, I'm really excited and I'll probably end up watching Kendrick Duncan sometime throughout the summer. I'm still going through some of the top prospects. I plan on watching guys like Kyle Hamilton and Brandon Joseph down the road. Especially, I think maybe in a couple days I'll start doing so, unless I have plans. But those are some of the prospects I plan on watching, and something I really going to keep an eye on. Prospect I did watch the other day, and I mentioned at the end of the podcast yesterday on the Draft Nut podcast, was Matt Corral, Ole Miss quarterback, very talented. Just on tape alone, and just watching him live from the games I watched of Ole Miss, he has the stuff. It's just, and I mentioned it before, it's about the mind and the eyes. And I talked about that a tiny bit yesterday at the end of the podcast. A little bit of an overview about Matt Corral. I keep switching up his last name. I do not know why. It's probably just a force of habit. But anyways, when I was watching Corral, I gotta stop doing that. I'm just going to call him Matt. Just going to do it. Forget it. When I was watching Matt, the redshirt junior, or he's going to be a redshirt junior this year. He'll be eligible for the Senior Bowl, which is very nice, and hopefully I'll be able to come down and see him in person. Matt he's got good tools, good arm talent. He has a very legit, very strong arm. Displays great velocity, and he can fit balls into really tight windows. Has the ability to make far hash throws, which I love. If you are a quarterback that has the ability to make far hash throws with consistency and without much struggle, you're going to do fine in the league, as long as everything else is good with you mentally and physically overall. He has effortless arm strength. I've seen him hit dudes 50 to 60 yards downfield in stride, dropping it in a bucket. The accuracy is there. He has flash precision on all three levels of the field. And that's when he just had time in the pocket. His mobility and overall athleticism, really nice. Quick, knows how and when to slide when he's on the move and take unnecessary hits. He knows how and when to keep plays alive with his legs. I don't have a concern with his size. He's a shorter quarterback, but we all know that shorter quarterbacks in today's NFL, they're going to do fine. Baker Mayfield's doing fine. Kyler Murray's doing fine. There are plenty of quarterbacks out there, and like Drew Brees, he had a historic career despite being only like 6 foot tall. Not worried about that. He displays good out structure ability. He can make plays on the move with his legs, or his arm. Has natural touch on his passes, just effortless throws. His upper body mechanics are really good. I believe he was a former baseball player, which is a big plus for any quarterback. If you have a baseball background, your upper body mechanics are most likely going to be pretty good. He has a really nice compact release that allows him to throw off many arm angles. And overall, like there is stuff to like about Matt. So I'm excited about Matt, but there are plenty of issues in his game. The accuracy is there. Like I said before, it's flashed, but it's inconsistent. And I think that's a little bit to do with the inexperience as a starter. Last year was really his first full season as a starter. His decision making has to be better. It has to be. He was incredibly reckless with the football last year. 2 games where he had 5 or more interceptions. 2 games. He threw 6 interceptions against Arkansas. In that game, I watched that game. I was like, what are we doing, Matt? What are we doing? And then next week, I think he threw for like 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. I'm like, he's got that gunslinger mentality. He's got that Brett Favre gunslinger mentality. Not saying he's Brett Favre 2.0, but he's got that gunslinger mentality that Favre and other quarterbacks after him have had. He needs to do a better job of reading the full field and identify different coverages that are in front of him. And also he needs to work on taking what's in front of him. His lower body mechanics definitely need tuning. His base can get sloppy, and that was the issue with Zach Wilson last year. From what I can remember, was his base was inconsistent, and that didn't allow much velocity to come out of Wilson's hands, and that's the same issue that Matt really has. His footwork does get sloppy at times, and that's a little bit from having, and that's a little bit of the tuning he needs this upcoming season. I'm hoping he has worked on it. He's going to continue to work on it. His pocket awareness needs to work. He needs to learn not to get so antsy in the pocket and try to force stuff. And like Sam Howell, he does struggle a little bit with manipulating safeties on the back end. And, Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, they don't run a lot of full progression stuff. And just like UNC with Phil Longo, Lane Kiffin, while he does implement some full progression concepts, it's not as often. But when they do happen, when they do call those plays, Matt's going to struggle a little bit, like how. So there's definitely a lot of similarities between Matt and Sam Howell. But, I think Howell is more refined in some of the more bigger concerned areas of his game than with Matt. Matt, his decision making I graded him just above average, or not just above average. I just rated him up at average decision making. Overall, like he does have some good moments, but it's very inconsistent. I like Matt's game overall. He got a 3rd round grade for me. In terms of for my summer scouting, which means he will probably not have a 3rd round grade for the 2022 draft process once that comes around. I'm expecting improvement from both Matt Corral and Sam Howell. Both are very talented quarterbacks. If Corral can really fix up the mind and the eye issue, where being able to see the field, being able to really connect his mind to his lower half, where he can really keep his base consistent and able to drive throws better, and also with the eyes, being able to see the field better, make better decisions, mind part. I think he's going to be really good, especially Sam Howell. I think Sam Howell is definitely there in the mind. The eyes a little bit of a concern. And not saying they have like horrible eye vision. It's just more of a football perspective. Like, yeah, like having good eyes, good vision of the field. So I like both quarterbacks. I think they have plenty of room for improvement, but they are definitely talented for sure.
Yeah, Matt Corral is one of those players that is polarizing because he has everything you kind of look for in the more modern day quarterback. You want someone that can throw, you know, off platform, that can throw multiple arm angles, and just be able to do things outside of structure and all those things that we look for now in quarterbacks, because kind of going away from the statues in the pocket, even though those statues in the pocket can win with their mind and their accuracy and whatnot, and able to maneuver the pocket. So I don't want to give disrespect to those guys that are mainly pocket passers, because you can still succeed. You just got to be
Mm-hmm.
really elite at the mind games, and being able to
Yeah.
manipulate defenses. But with Corral, it's more about you got to reel him in a little bit. I think Kiffin allowed him to be himself and play the quarterback position that he knows how to play. And while that's great and they put up a lot of numbers and stats, I think you got to be able to reel him in a little bit, and be able to, truly get him right in terms of mechanics, right in terms of being able to manipulate defenses a little bit more structured in his approach, be a little bit more, kind of conservative on plays he decides to extend versus plays he can use his legs. So I think it's going to be more about him growing this year, his second full year starting. Defenses are going to throw something at him a little bit different this year, which means he's going to have to really read defenses and be able to deliver the football on time and on target consistently, because we saw the times he didn't and times he thought he could win with just his arm talent and his ability to fit balls in tight windows. I think that's when he got himself in trouble, a la the Arkansas game, LSU game. So, for him, I think he's, just, I think you can put him in that similar elk as Sam Howell, like you said, because both of them have things you need to work on. Really, all these quarterbacks do. No one here is even close to a perfect prospect, or even close to what Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence were last summer. Even some of them, to some degree, Trey Lance as well. So, it's going to take some time, and we're just going to sit back and wait and see their development. I think, their development this year is going to be important, obviously, for their draft stock, but, just how, to see, looking back now on those summer evaluations, how accurate they were, and were we able to, fairly project what they're going to be. So, both quarterbacks, I think, are extremely talented and can do a variety of things. And, I think they're both valuable to their respective teams, and I think there are traits that they both possess that NFL teams covet. Just the other day, Daniel Jeremiah made a tweet about teams already interested in Matt Corral and what he's able to do, and he's already gathered a lot of intrigue around the league. So that just shows you his talent. He's extremely talented, but obviously decision making and other things need to get better for him.
A trend that I've started to notice, and it started from watching Spencer Rattler and through the three quarterbacks I've watched from the 2022 draft class, there's great talent, like obvious good talent with good tools and traits. But I think the mental game, the mental processing, the decision making for all three quarterbacks that I've watched, it needs work. A lot of the quarterbacks that have good talent, like Malik Willis, Spencer Rattler, Howell, Corral, Phil Jerkovic, Boston College quarterback, they all need work mentally. They have the talent is there, no doubt about it. And I feel like we're going to be seeing this more often over the next couple of years, because a lot of teams in college football are really going with the RPO stuff, not a lot of full progression concepts, I feel like we're going to be seeing that more often. I think that's the trend we are seeing so far with this 2022 draft class. If this 2022 draft class is able to improve in terms of at the quarterback position, it could be one of the more special group of quarterbacks we have seen. It has that potential. But right now, it looks similar to what the 2019 draft class looks like, but just with more depth and more talent. Not per se that there's like a legit, obvious number one guy, but I feel like there is more talent, more raw talent out there in college football that are draft eligible than what we're used to seeing. A couple quarterbacks I'm really interested in seeing this season. JT Daniels, seeing if he can take that next step. Just from what I saw on TV viewings, he looked very impressive. A couple other guys that come to mind, even if they're not draft eligible. CJ Stroud from Ohio State, who is taking over as starting quarterback for Ohio State. I want to see what type of talent he's got, and if he has a legit shot at being QB1 for the 2023 draft class. I know we're looking ahead, but just something on my mind. Through the three quarterbacks I've seen, they're really talented, but they have work to do. They need progression. If they can make progression, they're going to be fun to debate about come next spring. So I'm really excited about that. One more prospect I want to get into if you have any other prospects you want to talk about, we can do that. But I want to try and get Breece Hall out of the way. I end up finishing his tape through from last night and into this morning. Breece Hall he's got some similarities to Isaiah Spiller. I don't think from the notes I have of Breece Hall, he's very quick and decisive. Good. He showed some really nice cuts. I ended up tweeting out a video earlier today of his game against Kansas where he just made defender after defender miss after he took a zone play to I think it was the left, and then he just cut it back towards the right, making defenders miss as he goes on. So he knows how to make defenders miss in open space and in tight spaces, has really good change of direction skills, super creative and a smart runner, knowing how to string those moves together to make those defenders miss in the open and tight spaces. He has good vision, the patience that allows him to really let plays develop in front of him. And I love running backs that have good vision, that are able to really develop those plays in front of him. He knows how to get skinny, and when he sees something, when he sees a crack open up, maybe just the slightest crack in the offensive line, he'll see it and he will go. He has good acceleration, but he doesn't have the good straight long speed that we were used to seeing with like Travis Etienne and others in past drafts. He in limited touches that he had, I thought he was a solid receiver out of the backfield, but I'd like to see more production in that area and more expansion in that area of his game. I thought he was a good pass blocker, even though he wasn't the strongest guy in that area. And I think that's an area of concern with him, is that he's not the strongest running back, but he did display some good technique. He did flash the ability to be a 3-down back at the next level. But I think that needs to be more exposed if he wants to really be a true 3-down back at the next level. I think Iowa State needs to incorporate more running back pass option routes for Breece Hall this upcoming season. They need to get Charlie Kohler to be like, or not Charlie Kohler. Is it Charlie Kohler, the quarterback, or that's the tight end? I feel like I'm mixing the two up. Am I wrong?
You said what?
Who's the starting quarterback for Iowa State? Is it Charlie Kohler? That's the tight end. I feel like that's the tight end.
Oh, yeah, that's tight end. Brock Purdy is the quarterback.
Brock Purdy. If Brock is able to get distribute the ball out better to his running backs, I think that will really expand Hall's game. Um, he does tend to do too much at times. He doesn't have great contact balance. He'll bounce off like very bad tackles, but overall he doesn't possess like true good contact balance. I know Ben Glassmeyer, who is our Big 12 scout. He does have some concerns with his mileage, and he really brought a good point there. So I ended up putting that in my notes that mileage could be a concern at the end of the year, assuming he is like getting an incredible amount of reps in the run game, including production wise. And like I said before, he doesn't display elite long speed, nor is he that strong of a player, and that could really hurt him in short yardage situations. But overall, very fun player. Got a second round summer scouting grade for me. I think some people will say he is RB1. I won't disagree with them on that. Hall's very talented, so is Isaiah Spiller. I think both are very similar players in terms of what they bring to the table. But I'm really excited to really start going into more of the running back class as we go through the summer.
Yeah, those two guys were mentioned a ton in terms of top running backs. Obviously, I've heard Jerian Ely as well, the Ole Miss running back in the mix as well. Kyron Williams from Notre Dame. I know he's a few people's RB1. So this is going to be a interesting running back class at the very least. A lot of guys that are extremely talented and can do a little bit of everything. Run between tackles, get outside. Break off explosive runs. Although I think Bruce Hall is a little bit more explosive than like Isaiah Spiller. But, those guys are extremely talented and excited to probably get to them later in the summer. Going to try and kind of work my way up to different positions. Running back is a group I usually watch towards the end of the summer just because I like to try and get to as much, corners, DBs, receivers, all those different skill positions since there are always a high volume of guys that get drafted in those particular position groups. A couple other guys that I took a look at and will be doing some evaluations on over the next few days. One being James Mitchell, the tight end out of Virginia Tech. Kind of want to get more into the tight end class because, there's been some guys I already liked coming into this season that I liked last summer. And my, kind of feelings on them pretty much are the same. And as Brant Keithy, the Utah tight end, Trey McBride, the Colorado State tight end, those are two guys that I really liked last summer. Watching some of their brief 2020 film, watch a couple games of each. I'm pretty much at the same spot where I was with them last year, which is, I think McBride had a mid third round grade from me. And then Keithy had a fourth round grade. So both extremely talented tight ends. But James Mitchell is intriguing, has a nice blend of size as well as athleticism. Kind of someone is not necessarily a sleeper, but someone that hasn't been talked about a ton in terms of this summer scouting. Play on a Virginia Tech team that had a couple of draft picks on their offense. You had Khalil Herbert, had Christian Dare, saw a first round tackle. Mitchell kind of fell under the radar a little bit, but he shows natural, smooth hands. More of the athletic type of tight end that can be split out into the slot, can run routes from the slot, has nice, soft hands. Shows some upside as a blocker as well. He wasn't exactly the most dominant blocker. Someone like Trey McBride, I think, is probably one of the better run blocking tight ends in this upcoming class. But as for Mitchell, he showed the ability to block and go one-on-one with defensive end. I mean, it's very intriguing to see, kind of what will happen in terms of where he'll stack up amongst some of the other guys. But Mitchell is an intriguing player. I think he's definitely worth a watch. I think he had like 26 receptions last year, over 400 yards, a couple touchdown scores. But yeah, he's someone that flashes a little bit on film with Virginia Tech. I think he will probably have a day 3 grade for me once it's all said and done. But still going through that process, obviously. But I think he's one of those guys that I think, like I said, is more of a hybrid type guy and can, uh, be split out and not going to be the more traditional one, but probably more of an H-back type role. Second tight end probably, and be able to utilize him kind of all over the field. I think he's like 6'4", around 240, 250. So, like I said, has nice size, nice athleticism, has some pretty good speed. Doesn't have elite long speed, but has some pretty good speed to gather some separation. And I think his route running could be a little bit more improved. I think he has a pretty limited tree, runs a lot of outs, corners, things like that. I think would like to see him more on like dig type concepts and maybe even post and more down the seam, attacking down the seam. I think he could really expose some defenses in that area as well. So really liked him, really liked what he brought to the table. And then one other player before I'll send it back to you was Quentin Lake, the safety out UCLA. Thought he had really good range on the back end. UCLA rolled a lot of their coverages. He played a little bit all over the field. He played slot corner, played single high, played in the box and running downs as well. Think he could be a little bit better in terms of stacking and shedding blocks. I think he struggled a little bit in that department, especially when he was lined up inside the box and had to take on those bigger offensive linemen, especially against Stanford. He struggled getting away from their tight ends because there was some big dudes in the trenches, and Stanford is obviously a run-heavy team. But he showed the ability to do those things. He did struggle a little bit on some quick hitters, though he struggled a little bit in short zone areas in terms of coming down from his safety position and matching up against those quick seam routes, those hooks over the middle of the field. I think he struggled a little bit transitioning from his back pedal to flying upfield. And I think teams exploit that a little bit, especially when UCLA brought like corner blitzes, some linebacker blitzes, and they had some hot reads. Quentin Lake kind of struggled transitioning to getting to those, and a lot of passes were completed in front of him on those particular routes. But in terms of man defense, he looked really good in the slot when he had to man up. I thought his best game on tape was against USC. Had an interception, had a nice pass deflection where he came from the other side of the hash to make a play on the ball on the tight end running down the seam. And he made another fantastic play on the back end towards the end of the game against Arizona State, where he was guarding the number 3 receiver who ran, kind of a seam down the middle of the field. There was a slot receiver in between the outside receiver that was running basically wide open down the field, and he was able to come from the opposite hash all the way over to make a play and end the game. So really impressed with him. I think he's another safety, another mid-round safety that I'll like. Probably late 3rd, 4th round area is my guess what his grade will be, because I will dock him a little bit on stacking and shedding, some tackling issues as well, coming downhill. He can run the alley, can shoot the gap, make plays, but I would like to see him wrap up better, and would like to see him be a little bit better in terms of kind of letting his instincts take over when he's on the field. I think sometimes he kind of hesitates, and that allows completions, whatnot. But generally speaking, I think those 2 guys were very impressive, and 2 guys that I like in this draft process.
I think that's going to do it for us. Don't you think?
Yeah.
You ready to go? Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching our live stream of the Draft Nut podcast. We'll see you guys soon. Make sure you check out the name, image, likeness policy tracker for all of the different updates of different college football players with different types of deals, signings, and whatnot. Make sure you check that out at bluechipscouting.com, and also pinned on the Blue Chip Scouting Twitter account. Guys, thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe to the Blue Chip Scouting YouTube account, and also make sure you follow the Draft Nut Podcast Twitter account at Draft Nut Podcast. Guys, thank you so much. Devin Jackson, Jared Feinberg. We'll see you guys soon. Peace.